Okay, so part two to the video. We've already spoken about my history before. I cried out to God, to the point where the enemy was putting in loads and loads of different breadcrumbs to lead me into being more and more oppressed by him. So this led me in through a vision, then buying a yurt, and then what happened was I had an injury at work. So I was a tree surgeon for a short time, and I was trained up, and then I was in the field. I never got my climbing ticket, but I was doing it, and I was very much like, I don't need no man, I can do what a man can do. And I was the only female, and I had a bad spine. So what was I doing? I don't know. It was rebellion. Being stupid, angry, and rebellious is what I was doing. So I ended up getting an injury at work. At this point as well, I'd got very much involved in sex magic. Sorry to say it, I just have to say it. And then I basically did a divination, which I usually did for everything that I did. I sought the universe or whatever, and did runes, did all that stuff. So I asked what I should do next, and every time kept coming up as ayahuasca, ayahuasca, ayahuasca. I thought, okay. So I was friends with shamans, druids, all of that lot. And I messaged my friend who was friends with the witches that were training me on the land. So I was living on some land, and I was being trained to do aura reading, and they were doing Reiki healing on me, and energy healing, basically Reiki, and hedge witch. And they were training me how to make herbs for potions for healing and all of this sort of thing, and they were training me up. And one of their friends who also does, well, they did ayahuasca anyway, but a friend of mine, I contacted him, who lived in Glastonbury, said, oh look, I've consulted many different forms of divination, and it keeps coming up that I should be doing ayahuasca, that I need to do the ayahuasca, and that's the next step on my journey. And basically this person then went away and came back to me and said, the spirit of ayahuasca has told me something, and sent me a message, and it was divine message because it was something I was thinking about. So confirmation again. So he ended up coming with a bag of tricks to my yurt, and at that time the land I was on was owned, it's always been owned by someone who does circus and different yoga camps and energy healing retreats and stuff. I mean, on the land I lived on, you used to get I think they were shamans. They would bury themselves in the ground with a straw out of the earth and be there for 3 days or something crazy. There was so much. It was a hive of spiritual activity is where I was. And basically at that time that my friend had come to administer ayahuasca and also energy healing with me, he knew my spine issue. There happened to be a girl that was on the I think it was the yoga festival was on at the moment at that time. She was called Chusi, and she'd come from Peru, and she also was involved in ayahuasca. So there was my friend, and he said, look, there's this girl called Chusi. So there's Chusi and Chelsea, both. There was just so many things that the enemy was putting in place. Man, he went on overtime to make things bad. So my friend ended up doing the ayahuasca ceremony with us. I took so much more than probably I should have. I ended up taking, I think, 9 cups of it, maybe a bit more. And I probably should do another video completely about these things. If there's anything in any of these videos that you want me to do more details on, then by all means let me know in the comment section below, because I think I should do a video separately about the whole ayahuasca thing, because there's so much that you can say about it. But briefly, my friend who was the energy healer, he described the following day a creature that was attached to me. And the way he described it was something that I used to draw over and over and over again. Back in the day when I was really dark, when I was a child, I used to draw this really wounded fairy with a forked tail, battered wings, really big eyes, just this evil spiky teeth on the floor, wounded, and I called it my wounded fairy. Honestly, guys, this is so dark, you know. I had no idea. I had no idea at the time, but that's a fallen angel, isn't it? It's a demon. So he described it as, you know, oh, it's a nice thing. It was there and it was wrapping its tail around your spine, and I sent it into the light. And, you know, he was saying all this spiel of like, you know, and I'm sure he believed it, you know, and saw it. But again, he was deceived too. So when I was on the ayahuasca, briefly, there was this deep, wise hum. I can only explain it as like you're in the belly of the earth and you're just surrounded by this raw, deep wisdom. But now I look back and I think, whoa, that was so evil. But at the time, I knew at the time it was not happy-go-lucky energy. I knew at the time it was serious stuff. I think I took the red vine. So anyway, there was basically hundreds and hundreds of creatures squirming around my yurt, like all around it, and snakes coming in. So it was like Peru had come into the yurt, and you know, I was obviously sick and the other end, and you know, but there was at one point where he was doing the energy healing on me, and I got just blasted into this sort of almost like I was in another place, but that doesn't matter. But one point I was there and I was laying down and I felt the presence of legions, guys, legions of entities lay hands on me. Unbelievable. It was like, at the time I was like, wow, this is so amazing. I was so reverent because it was such an incredible encounter, and it was like as many as could all came around me, and they were glowing like a golden light is what it seemed like, and they were all laying hands on me, and on their shoulders were more laying hands on them, and then on their shoulders and hands on them, and it was like this legion of entities laying hands on me. Guys, oh, that freaks me out. I mean, praise God, I'm free now, but when it clicked in my head after I'd come to Christ of what happened to me at that point, I really, horrible. And so then after that as well, he did that, I can't remember the name of it, but the snuff that they shoot it up your nose, the snuff that goes up your nose, I had that. I had this other thing that, like eye drops of chili that go into your eyes. You name it, I did it, you know. And the following day I had so much peace. So much peace. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you. In the last video, before, how old was I? Yeah, you know, I mentioned briefly about the abortion I had. Just before that, I had a encounter which I believe was I think it was beyond the Kundalini awakening that I had. It was something else. How do I explain it? I was not taking any drugs. I wasn't on anything like this. I was smoking weed, but that was just my lifestyle. I was on that all the time. I was in America. It was when I was visiting my dad, and I was surrounded by Christians telling me about Jesus. And I was being polite, but also it was freaking me out. How old was I? 20. 20? 20. So this is backtracking from the ayahuasca. We'll go back to the ayahuasca story in a minute, but I just need to explain this. I'd reached a place that I had never ever reached in my New Age experience ever again since, and the ayahuasca didn't even compare to it. So this is what I'm saying. People go on these spiritual practices and these different things to reach nirvana, or that is what I think happened to me. And so the ayahuasca, as much as it's when you're in that when you're within that world, ayahuasca is like quite up there when it comes to reaching peace, spiritual peace, and all of this stuff. But something happened to me that was, this is probably going to sound crazy, but it was like I was baptized in the satanic spirit. So, when you're born again and you're filled with the Holy Spirit, it was like the flip side of that. It was like the demonic version of that. I had been practicing, so at that point from 20, I'd been practicing, from the age of 14 was it? So from 14 to 20, I was doing meditation and yoga, mantras, and learning about chakras, and doing, a lot of every day, religiously. So very much into that stuff for a long time. I was on my dad's balcony in America. I know this was the tactic of the enemy to try and pull me away from anything to do with Christ, because I was around Christians at this time. For the first time, I was around born again Christians telling me about Jesus, and the enemy intercepted. And he basically, I was on my dad's balcony, and I was there 1 second, and then I was not there. I was taken involuntarily out of my body, and I was blasted into this space which I believed was all consciousness, was the beginning and the end, everything, the I am. And I was in there, and I felt so much love and so much peace. And I no longer remembered my history, my future, anything. I no longer knew anything to do with being a human. I was completely severed from my body and my mind, and I was this sort of floating consciousness of experiencing this, what I thought was pure love and peace. And all I can describe it is whilst I was there was like a keystone was put into place, and everything, like neurons in a brain, everything connected, and I could see that I was part of the I am. And then I came back into my body, and I don't know how long I was gone for. I don't even know how it happened. I didn't ask for it to happen, it just happened. And whilst I was there, it was timeless. And when I came back into my body, I just cried and cried and cried and cried, because I didn't identify with this place, and I wanted so badly to get back there. So badly. It was like a drug, guys. It was like the most euphoric experience that was so, now I look back at it, so sickly and so thick and so demonic. But at the time I was I didn't even tell people about it for years, because it was so precious to me. It was like, I reached nirvana. I got to that place that these Buddhists, these people have been training to be there, and I was part of the I am, and I've connected back in, and my pride went poof out the roof. And I thought, oh, I know all these things and no one else does. And anyway, at that time as well, what I was doing is I was trying to capture some hummingbirds on my camera fighting, and I was waiting all week, maybe 2 weeks, maybe even 3. I was there for a while, trying to get this thing to happen. And when I came back into my body, and I wept and I wept, and I just said, if you've got any time for me. And remember, I came back into my body believing that I was part of this collective consciousness, that I could communicate with the universe, but I was also part of the universe. So it was like a mini God syndrome that it gave me, yeah? And I came back into my body, and I said, if you have time for me, will you please show me these hummingbirds fighting? And they darted right in front of my face, and they started fighting right in front of me. And I was like, wow, okay. But the experience I had in that place seemed more real to me, and I had many experiences like this when I was heavily involved in meditation and all this stuff, where I would have dreams and I'd come back and I'd cry because I didn't feel like this was me. I was slowly becoming detached from myself, of who I was. I was starting to float away, and I don't know what else was going to replace me, but there was definitely plans for that. All I can say is that happened. That was a massive deal for me. And yeah, obviously I had a Kundalini awakening, my third eye was opened, all of that happened anyway. I was involved in all of that anyway, but that was something else. And it was so sinister because it felt so good and so right, you know? And it completely left me in a place of wanting more. I just did not want anything more than to be there again, and I never got back. And all I was doing was constantly chasing to be back there again. It was just the most sinister plot of this drug that you can never reach again. And I used to think about that moment that I had, and I used to cry about it because it was like, why can't I be there? And I'm sure that heaven's going to be like this, but like pure and holy and good. So the ayahuasca, I would never say it went that far, but you know, I was definitely, I believe personally, I think when I took the ayahuasca, I interacted and slightly with psychedelics as well. I interacted with the second heaven, so I would, communicate with entities there, which I thought were spirit guides and things like that. But obviously now I know they're demonic because they showed me they're demonic when I came to Christ. So I think when I was involved in when I did the ayahuasca and I had all of these things lay hands on me, at that time I thought it was great, but more and more I was getting more and more. So I'll just explain to you. As soon as ayahuasca finished, lasted all night, you know, and we explained more things in the morning, and different people had the same visions of what happened, and you know, whatever. I felt this immense peace. I remember I was wearing a white dress and I went into the river and I was bathing in the river and I was like, oh, it's so beautiful, you know, all of that. But then I realised I was having really, really bad visions at night, like I'd never had before, like horrible visions, and it was like murderous imagery of myself. It was awful, guys. I won't go into detail, but it was just gory things happening to me, and it was flashing before my eyes every night, and it was so overwhelming, and it just didn't marry up to everything that everyone had been telling me about, you know, this is a good thing, you're opening up your mind to the spirit realm, and let Mother ayahuasca guide you, and all of this. And then on the other hand, I'm having murderous images at night time, and I'm like, I can't tell anyone this. I can't speak to anyone about this. What's wrong with me? Maybe it's something to do with me. And that's another thing. When you're involved in the law of attraction and manifesting your reality, and you've still got a crippled spine, you start to question, maybe there's something wrong with my mind. Maybe I can't fix my reality because my mind's broken. So, oh gosh, that got me so enslaved, so in bondage. And I did things like sigil magic as well, and man, that bit me badly. Things I would create, sigil magic. I won't go into detail about that, but I'd do it, and then at the beginning it would seem right, and then it would absolutely come back so badly. It was like, wow, you can't write this, you know. So I was having these images, and I then started to have these sort of spur of the moment, it would just happen, where I'd be vomiting and I'd be in so much agony in my abdomen, and it would last for about 9 hours, to the point where I'm hallucinating because of the pain in my stomach. And so I was honestly, it was just awful. It was absolutely awful. And it wasn't long before I ended up wanting to kill myself because of all the imagery what I was having at night. So what it was is, I'd have these gory images about, I won't go there because I don't want to put that in your mind, of me being hurt badly, really torturously. And I'd be like, oh gosh, what is that? Oh gosh. And the more I'd freak out about it, the more intense they got. So then I played with it a bit, because I was all about mindfulness and, you know, how you project and what you get back and all that. So I was going, right, okay, so if I accept this, maybe it'll be easier. You know, I've got tinnitus, and when I rest about my tinnitus, it doesn't seem so loud. When I stress about it, it gets louder. So let me try and do that with the visions I'm having at night. So I had to end up becoming sort of numb to images of me being tortured and killed. It was like the spirit of murder, basically, self-murder, torturing me at night, and I had to laugh about it for it to go away. It started to make me numb to it, to the point where I'd be able to just go, oh, that's funny. It was bad, it was sinister, it was like this training, reprogramming my brain, basically, and I ended up wanting to kill myself. It was horrendous. It was absolutely horrendous. I was just, and I remember I was with another partner at that time, and it was just, bless his heart, he didn't see half of it. I'd go to the shower with knives, wanting to just, it was bad. I would scream and smash things on myself. I would say possessed, guys, because I was no longer in control of myself anymore. I was so despairing and so wanting to end my life, and it was so supernatural. Like, there wasn't really a reason. Yes, I was in pain with my spine or whatever, but spiritually I had become so yoked with so much demonic activity and so much demonic projections into my brain that I could no longer function anymore. And I ended up going back home, and that partner I was with ended it with me, and I don't blame him. I really, gosh. And my mum, I basically opened up to my mum about my situation. I, to be fair, I couldn't hide it. I looked like an absolute nervous wreck. I was like this. I was like rocking back and forward and shaking. I was like this. I was an absolute mess. Just completely, I would say possessed. I would. It was just horrendous. And constantly in my mind was like, how am I going to get to the train tracks to go in front of a train? When can I do it? When can I be alone away from people so I can do it? And then I'd have another voice going, what are you doing? Make sure you're around people so you don't do this. What's going on? And so I was starting to split, is what I can explain. And so my mum took me in, and I went back home to live with my family. And at this time, oh gosh, I was put on loads of medication to make me into a bit of a vegetable. Anti-anxiety pills, anti-depression, and all of this. And I was diagnosed with severe depression and anxiety. And my mum, bless her, was really looking after me. She really was, bless her heart. And then I started to get a bit better because I was on these tablets. But then at night time, I'd have awful dreams at night. But this time my family then started to tell me, oh, why don't you start to be Gary's carer? And that's the uncle that did the sexual abuse to me, who I hadn't explained to my family had happened. And bear in mind, they all knew him as like my dad before, so he was like as close to me as a dad, and he did that to me. So, and I hid it for 10 years. But then I was back, and I was on the edge of suicide. And then they said, well, now you're feeling better, why don't you, because he's sick as well, you can like kind of do stuff together, you can help him and all of that. And I was like, oh. So I went to a counsellor, and I just said, look, this is my situation, what should I do? And they said, they shouldn't have probably said this to me, but they said, you got to speak to your family about it. You got to tell them. So then basically I told my mum, and that was so sad. And I told my auntie and whatever, and the rest of it. And it was interesting because it was like the Lord was already working on me before I even reached out and cried out to him. He was there, because I had to start coming clean about things. I had to start being truthful. I could no longer hold things and hide things anymore, because I was so engulfed in so much darkness. I could not actually carry another heavy thing on. I had to just be free about it, just tell people about it. What's the worst that could happen? This is the worst that is happening right now, sort of thing. So that was a big deal, having to explain that. That was very scary. And I stopped smoking weed at that point as well, because the voices were so loud in my head, so loud. I couldn't do it. And then at this point is when my mum had an encounter with Jesus. And yeah, she had a moment which I'll let her do her testimony. She's going to come on here and do her testimony as well. So she had an encounter with the Lord, and massively just completely changed her world, you know. And but then she started going, oh my gosh, I've been told because the Lord's going to come back now. And she was freaking out, and she was putting she was staying at home with me because I needed 24/7 watch so I didn't run in front of a rail track, you know. I was an absolute mess. And but she was at home and she was watching loads of doomsday films and things about, you know, like the tribulation and stuff. And I was just like, I can't take this. I was on anti-anxiety tablets and I was still like, what is she doing? And I thought she was mad. I thought she was the crazy one. You know, yeah. So I ended up, what did I do? I ended up going in a friend's van and going to Portugal because I was like, I need to get away from this situation. Not really this situation, but I need to go, and the intention was to go and be self-sufficient in a way again, because this is what's good for me in a way to reboot. So I was on all these drugs and everything, and I thought, look, I'll go cold turkey and I'll go and live in a cave somewhere. I've been to the cave community before. I know where to go. I could just go there and just go in self-survival mode again, and hopefully that will kind of stop my mind thinking too much, and I can get off this medication because I can't live like this. So that was the intention, and my mum gave me a little tiny Bible, and before I left to go, this is the pivotal moment. She said to me, "When's the last time you actually prayed?" I went. She was so good. She was definitely leaning on the Spirit with me. She was really good. Because she was sick and I was doing sage in her room and like feeding her potions and stuff like that. And she was born again Christian, and she was like keeping quiet and just trusting in the Lord that I would come to him eventually. But she didn't say, don't do that, you're being a witch. You know, she didn't push me away. She was so good with me. Bless her heart. And so she said, when's the last time if you've ever prayed? I said, I don't know, probably when I was a kid. I don't really know. She goes, I bet he misses you. And that was just like, boom, wow. I didn't think about that. I did not think about that. And around that same sort of time as well, I had, I was at the end of myself by this point, because I was so, you know, as you've known, I've told you the whole history. I just cried out. And I think at that time I thought I was speaking to the universe again. Certainly not Jesus. I did not think I was speaking to him at all. I just reached out and said, look, I can't do this. I can't do this anymore. I said, I've tried so hard to find out where the truth is and to find peace. And the further I look, the further I don't see it. I can't find it. I don't know where it is. Can you show me now? And so finally I just asked God to show me it his way. It took a long time. And that was it. A simple prayer, but a really sincere prayer of, I can't do this anymore. I don't know where you are. Can you show me who you are? Teddy, don't grumble. And yeah, so then I went in my friend's van and things started changing for me immediately. I was different. I no longer wanted to be promiscuous. I just didn't want to do those things that I used to do, and I was really promiscuous before this. Really. And I ended up getting out of my friend's van in Portugal and then making my way down on my own to Spain, down to the bottom of Spain, where I knew someone who lived there. I met a few people from before travelling, and I knew there was a community of free caves, like natural caves, not like glamping, but you know, an old mattress in a dark cave somewhere, you know, that sort of thing. And oh, Ted, you come to say hello? Why don't you come and say hello to everyone on YouTube? Oh, look, he's got an afro. Oh, you're my little baby. Nice. Little happy break. You're gorgeous. Go on, you go back down there now. So, I've got 10 more minutes. I think this is going to be in 3 parts, this video. Okay, so I made my way down to the caves, met my friend, and they said, yes, there just happens to be a cave where someone's moved on because travellers and whatnot lived there, or homeless people, bit of both really. And I ended up going cold turkey. I never smoked weed anyway at that point. I didn't want to drink. I just didn't want to do anything like that, and I didn't take any medication anymore. And I ended up going and setting up in this cave, and I had a little rucksack, and it's a bit of climb up to get to the cave. And I remember just singing out songs. It's a new day, it's a new dawn, it's a new life for me. Nina Simone, I think it is. I was singing this out from across the cave, and I was like, right, that is it. This is a new chapter now. I don't know, there was just obviously some freedom from that prayer. I didn't realise at the time, and but I was on a quest. I knew that because I prayed that, I didn't even know it was a prayer, but because I'd requested that from the universe, I knew that I was now on a journey of discovery of the right way, because it was no longer me trying to force it, is what I kind of is what I thought. So yeah, I basically set up camp in this cave, and started collecting firewood. Would go to the flea markets and collect bits of bedding that people were throwing away. So I made myself a comfy bed in there. I'd go to the supermarkets when they shut and throw things away, and I'd collect food with other travellers and homeless people, and we'd all share the food around that was going to spoil that day, and we'd eat. And I just started to settle in that way of life for a little while, you know. I think it was about a month. And then my friend who I knew from before, she'd just got involved with a community of Sufi Muslims. And I won't go into too much detail in all of that, but basically I ended up getting initiated in to Sufi Islam. Basically it's exactly the same as what I was involved with before. It's very much the mystical side of Islam, very much about females as well, which I found quite interesting, because Islam didn't seem like that at all with the Quran. But I was just around those people, and there was again those divine encounters happening again, and I was like, oh, maybe this is the truth. So I was like, okay, all right, okay, so I'm here and I'm learning these things, so let's look at this, you know. And I'd go to different things, you know, just exactly the same spirit again as what I was involved in before. I just knew it, but maybe I thought this was maybe more right. So I ended up becoming initiated in, and my name was now Fatima. And I'd go to the Durga and worship with them. But it was very interesting, because when I started worshipping in there, when they said Muhammad, I don't know why, guys, I know now, but at the time I didn't know why. I couldn't do it. I could not say he was the only way. I couldn't. And then also when they said things like Jesus wasn't crucified, I was thinking, what's that? That's interesting. Okay. Because I was on a pursuit of truth now, you know, like real truth. I didn't care what it cost me anymore, basically. I didn't want to make it up myself anymore, because I was just so ruined anyway. I wanted to know the truth, truly, from God. And so I was like, okay, so right, how interesting. My mum's in England, and she's texting me little bits and pieces of verses of this and that, and I'm just not really interested. And I flick open that little Bible. I remember I walked across this viaduct where I used to bathe in the viaduct, which is a really tall, I think it was a viaduct, I don't know, it was a really tall bridge across the valley with cold, fresh water streaming through, and I'd go and wash in there looking out to the sea, and, you know, I felt like I was free and all of that. And I took the Bible up there, opened it, and was just like, I just landed on deaf ears. I had no idea what it was talking about, you know. So I actually ended up leaving that Bible, because I lived on a nudist beach for a while as well. I ended up getting bumped up to this really beautiful place in the Kanye, in the cane. All these hippies would make tunnels in the cane. It looked like bamboo, and the police would come down and sweep the beach, but through the bamboo there was this whole network of hippies living with sofas and kitchens and everything like that in there. And then I ended up finding, because I knew the people and made friends, a really nice place up on the other end in the cane. I had a grapevine, banana tree. It was just like paradise on the beach, but hidden. So, and I could hear the waves at night. It was lovely, apart from the ant trail that would go across my face in the morning. But I left my Bible there, and I ended up going up into the mountains to live with this community of Sufis. And I remember I was in there at one point, kind of like, felt like I was worshipping, but it just felt wrong. It just felt wrong, because it was like about Allah, but I just couldn't. It was strange. As much as I wanted to, I just couldn't. And I lived at this lady's house up in the mountains for a little while, because she was away for a few weeks, and she wanted me to look after her plants, water her plants and stuff. So that was really nice. It's like a 3-story marble, beautiful house I had all to myself. And I remember she had a Quran on the side, and I couldn't touch it. I just couldn't touch it, and I can't, now I understand why. I couldn't explain it at the time, though. I felt really weird, because there I was before in the New Age. No, don't bark at anyone. There I was in the New Age, and I was like picking and choosing everything. I was doing, Buddhist chants with my neighbour up there. I was learning energy healing from witches over there. I was open to it all, but for some reason, when I was actually initiated into this Sufi Islam, I couldn't actually even say half of the stuff or touch their book. I was like, this is strange. What is going on here? And because I was in a pursuit of truth, I was like, right, they're saying Jesus wasn't crucified. Okay, I need to bridge the gap here. I need everyone to be right. My heart's desire at that point was my Muslim friends and my Christian mum, dad in America. I needed there to be where their books marry together and they're on the same page, so that they're all safe. I realised that there's only sort of one truth of God. He is coming from one, and I desperately needed them to join up to be coherent, and so that everyone was good. So this took me on a journey of looking into the Quran and looking into the Bible and reading there was so much similarities, yes, but when it came to the actual main doctrine of Christianity, Islam was completely the opposite. And I was like, how can this work? How can this work? Like Christianity says Jesus was the Son of God. Islam says Allah has no son. So Yahweh and Allah cannot be the same God, because one has a son, one doesn't. Hang on, what? And they say that Jesus, in the Christian faith, was crucified for the sins of the world, raised again, conquered death, and he is the saviour to anyone who puts their trust in him. And that's like the main thing. But Islam says, no, Allah swapped Jesus on the cross. It wasn't really Jesus that was crucified. Jesus wasn't crucified. And I thought, well, that's not the same God then, is it? It can't be. It's completely the opposite of each other. And I was really annoyed by this. I was like, what's going on? So I'd say to my friends, like, what about Jesus, though? About him not being crucified? That's kind of a big deal for Christians. And you're saying Christians are welcome within Sufi Islam, as well as all these other, they're quite like the hippie versions of Islam. Well, that doesn't matter, they'd tell me. It's not that important. Don't worry, don't look at that bit. I was like, okay. And I was around people that were influenced by the enemy but didn't know it. And I was like, this is not starting to make sense to me. Something is seriously wrong here. I just knew it in my spirit. There was something seriously wrong here. So I'm going to stop it there. And this is just before I cry out to the Lord. So the next video is going to get even better. Sorry to cut it short, but I'm trying to do 40 minutes each time because it's a lot, right? But thank you guys for sticking it out and watching these videos. And all glory to God. Yeah. All right. God bless you.